morning. I'm Dilip Thakore, editor of EducationWorld.
Good morning. I'm Summiya Yasmeen, managing editor.
In the very first issue of January, we have an extraordinary cover story. In fact, we have an extraordinary issue packed with some really interesting stories and columns and
indeed.
articles. Our cover story is on the Chaitanya group, which has been hitherto a low-profile Andhra and Telangana-based school chain.
Yes.
Which
now is planning to go national.
Yes.
And in this extraordinary cover story, we talk about their journey of how this group started with just one junior college in Vijayawada and how it has expanded to 750 education institutions, which include schools as well as junior colleges, with a mind-boggling 650,000 students, and all these schools are all owned, they're all proprietary schools.
No, the extraordinary thing about the Chaitanya group is that the high percentage of school leavers from their schools who get into the country's best science and technology colleges, namely the IITs.
As also medical colleges, they have some fantastic track record of students excelling and being admitted into the country's elite IITs, and also clearing the NET, which is now the main entrance exam for admission into all medical colleges across India. Let's talk about what we've got for you all in the first issue of 2022. In our editorial section, we've done two very important edits on two very topical issues. The first one is on why Indian states and the centre need to tighten up our law and order and justice mechanisms. We highlight the recent hate speeches which are given in Haridwar as an example, and say why it's important that we strengthen these
the law, order and justice systems. Actually, most people are not aware, that the real reason why government came into being like thousands of years ago was to maintain law and order, and that's the primary function of government.
Yes, and unfortunately, of late it's not been happening. So this is
I think the public and government have lost sight of their primary function. And the second editorial, of course, is something we've been talking about for a long time, is that don't keep shutting down schools at the slightest. Schools are the first, because of coronavirus pandemic, the schools are first to shut and last to open.
Yes, it should be the other way around. Schools should be the last to shut and the first to reopen. I mean, countries around the world, now we're in the third year of the pandemic, and countries around the world, most of them have learned their lessons. I mean, we are no different from them. If countries in the US, UK, France, Germany, which are also undergoing and experiencing huge COVID infection rates, can keep their schools open, I'm sure in India we can also keep them open through innovative strategies. We can have staggered timings, alternate day classes.
No, and I think the most important thing you have to bear in mind is that even before the pandemic, the learning outcomes of schools in India were pathetic by world standards.
Now they've got worse.
And can we afford to mar and tar the future of our children because of exaggerated caution in the matter of closing down schools? According to our editorial, according to one Dr. Joseph Allen, the chances of school-age children being hospitalized due to COVID conditions is 1 in 100,000. So there's something seriously wrong in our society, and including the parents' community, that they panic at the slightest and don't even want to examine options like 50% of children going to school, maybe going twice a week, 3 times a week, not every day. But we cannot. The learning of children and learning loss of children has to be balanced against the risk of infection. We have a serious problem coming up in terms of making good the loss of learning in the past 60-70 weeks during which schools have been closed down in India.
Yes, true. And in some states such as West Bengal, I mean, primary school children haven't been to school now for more than 2 years.
Yes, and
So-
this is reflected in our education. There's a report
Yes.
filed by our correspondent
In our
in Calcutta.
education news section.
In the education news section, it's aptly entitled "Exaggerated Caution of the Chief Minister,
Yes.
who closes down the school at the slightest."
Yeah. So in our education news section, apart from what Dilip just said, the news from West Bengal, we have news from Delhi. There's a very promising development of the NCRT and the Union Ministry of Women and Child Welfare preparing a national curriculum for early childhood education. As you know, the NEP now promises children 5 years of early childhood education, and also focuses on the development of
After neglecting it for some 30,
Yes.
40 years, some Anganwadis, which are free of charge nutrition centers and lactation centers, they also provide a modicum of education to the youngest children, have been neglected for 30 to 40 years. And their learning outcomes are very poor. So now there's a new curriculum that's been
Absolutely.
written for them,
Yeah.
and one hopes that it will be implemented.
Yes, and in Maharashtra we have a very in fact, disturbing and depressing story about the many scandals in the teacher eligibility test. Recently, many arrests have been made. Huge malpractices were reported in the conduct of TET exams, where students on payment of money have been given marks.
Teachers,
Aspiring teachers have been given extra marks.
Cheating to qualify as government school teachers. Incidentally, government school teachers are very highly paid compared to private school teachers, generally speaking, and therefore it's quite scary that a large number of underqualified and ill-qualified and unqualified teachers are being recruited into government service. One hates to think what they're going to teach children when they're not qualified themselves.
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
it's quite disturbing, the kind of scandals in education, neglect. And this is what Education World is trying to report and write. And we need your support of parents, members of the public.
Yeah. And of course, there are education notes and education news section where you can read about
News of the
stories which are
states,
happening from other states of the Indian Union. And this year we have a very stimulating expert comment column written by Dr. Neeraj Kaushal, who is a professor of social work at Columbia University, USA. She's written a very stimulating essay on gender for the Republic at 72. As you know, in less than 7 days, India will be celebrating its 72nd Republic Day on January 26. So she sets forward an agenda, Dilip, and in that, prime among that is that why India needs to enhance substantially its investment in education and skills development of children and youth. This issue also features several pictorial essays on December 17th and 18th, before the Omicron surge began. Education World hosted its Education World India School Ranking Awards 21-22 in Leela, Gurgaon, and over 600 to 700 top school promoters, principals, educators, and trustees had attended this event.
Yeah, in fact, they were delighted to attend after a long interregnum, because last year we didn't hold that event.
Everyone was delighted to meet each other and network in person. This event held over 2 days to maintain social distancing and COVID protocols. The event was held over 2 days. So there's a pictorial essay of this event and schools which are awarded.
Yes.
So we highly recommend.
We don't apologize for celebrating excellence of schools. A lot of people, of course, think this is some kind of a money-making gambit, which is not. We hardly break even on this, but we want to celebrate, and we make no apologies about it, to celebrate education excellence, innovation, and the delivery of and people making an effort to improve learning outcomes, which is so important, and develop human capital. It's quite amazing how much government discouragement there is of education excellence. because they're so worried that private educators may make a profit out of providing education, which there's nothing wrong with it, because even the Supreme Court has said there's nothing wrong with it. But the mindset of government and leftists and these do-nothing comment media pundits against privately provided education, which they themselves avail, is something very hard to eradicate.
Yes.
Anyway, so we have many pages on that, and of course, then we come again the prize story. I mean, the pride of place is given to our story in the Chaitanya group, which has done an excellent job of. They're totally focused. While it's all right for maybe liberals and the wealthy and elite to say that
criticize them as cram schools,
and to stress perhaps liberal, enjoyable education, which is of course not a bad thing. We ourselves advocate it, but for many people in the lower middle classes, working classes, getting a really good education and getting into one of the top higher education institutions of India is of critical importance, because it totally changes their life map. So I think the Chaitanya group, though they are often criticized as cram schools and skill and drill schools, they should be highly commended, and particularly the two hard-driving Bopanna sisters. That's a remarkable attribute of these schools. It's driven by of course, founded by Dr. B.S. Rao and his wife Jhansi Bopanna, who was also highly educated, both medical practitioners who worked abroad and accumulated some capital and came back to India very commendably, and were sort of disillusioned that so few children from Andhra Pradesh were getting into undivided Andhra Pradesh were getting into the top IITs and medical colleges.
Yes.
So they started their first school in 1986 to prepare children for the entrance exams, the very stiff entrance exams of the IITs, medical colleges, and the top few 100 colleges of India.
So now let's move ahead. In this issue, we also feature rankings, two rankings. One is the EducationWorld January India School Rankings.
Yes.
This is separate from our survey,
Yes.
India School Rankings. Here, what we've done is we've constituted a very high-powered jury comprising very knowledgeable educationists. This year, they included Fatima Garkar, Rohit Mahindra, Mr. Damodar Goyal, Ms. Neeta Sen-Gupta, and Kalhan Mattu, who rated and ranked. We received nominations across more than 12 categories, and these categories
we invite nominations.
Yes.
Schools which feel that they're left out, they should go to our website, fill up the form,
and nominate themselves.
Yes.
And this is across different categories, which included STEAM education excellence, campus design and architecture, best digital learning infrastructure, library and reading culture. So the jury has ranked nominated schools 1 to 10. So the rankings are featured here, and we also
should we tell them this is essentially for schools which are not so well known, right?
Schools, all schools are welcome to apply, and
including schools which are low profile and
yes.
are back in the hinterland somewhere.
Yes, all schools are most welcome to apply.
Anywhere in India,
yes,
right?
Anywhere in India.
Yes, and if you feel that you've done a good job in any of these categories, please fill up that form, send it to us, we put it before the jury, and they will rate and rank it.
Yes. So K-12 schools, we also have EducationWorld India Preschool Grand Jury Rankings. These also feature pre-primaries. Again, the methodology was the same. We invited nominations from preschools across 10 categories. The categories here were slightly different. We had categories such as innovative pedagogy. We had categories like teacher, parent, student engagement. Categories such as health, nutrition and safety, nature-friendly preschools. So here also a jury was constituted, which assessed the nominations of preschools.
And I think it's important to perhaps tell our viewers that Education World have been the champions of early childhood education right from the year 2010.
Yes, when we hosted the country's first international early childhood education global conference.
We are champions of education. We are very proud that in the latest NEP, National Education Policy, early childhood education is given pride of place, and we believe that is because of our efforts. And we rank. Usually, we have a totally separate survey for preschool, ground field-based survey for preschool rankings, don't we?
We did this year also in December. The Education World India preschool rankings have been printed and published across 6 cities.
Oh, okay. But it was limited this time.
Yes. Instead of
because
we
of the
usually do
COVID.
16 cities, but this time we restricted to the 6 metros because of the huge devastation the pandemic has caused to the early childhood education sector.
Yes, an unimaginable number of preschools are shut down.
Yes.
And nobody seems to care about it. So therefore, but we care about it. Therefore, in addition to the survey, the field survey we did, we've had a grand jury ranking of the best preschools in India. The idea is to encourage early childhood educators who are doing a very important public and national service.
Yes, those schools and preschools which missed out in applying for our grand jury rankings, please do so this year. We'll be inviting, we usually invite nominations in July, August for these awards. Please do apply.
Yes.
And now moving ahead to our book review section, Dilip.
What about the citations that we gave to extraordinary educators?
Yes.
We are a magazine totally committed to improvement of education and to make education the #1 item on the national agenda. So every year we celebrate people who made, unsung people mainly, who made a great contribution to education. So this year we gave us extraordinary achievement in education leadership awards to Professor
Dr. G.S. Madhav Rao.
Yes,
an educator of over 30 years standing and experience
in India and abroad.
Schools abroad, and for his extraordinary service to upgrading Indian education, we awarded the Education World Extraordinary
Achievement in Education
Award.
Yeah.
And also the same award was awarded to Dr. Ashok Pandey, who's again a very highly respected Indian K-12 educator and who's currently the director of the Alcon Group of Schools in Delhi.
So you can read about them in the latest issue.
Yes, and their extraordinary work.
Then in our teacher, we have an interesting article, an interesting essay presented by Dr. Revati Srinivasan, who is the Director of Education and Principal of the highly ranked Srimati Sulochana Devi Singhania School in Bombay, in Thane.
Yeah, she talks about why educators and teachers should not abandon some good pandemic upsides. Like for instance, the technology, the benefits technology can offer in enhancing educational experience.
Essentially says once it's all over, don't go back to the status quo.
Yes.
Let's absorb what we've learned during the pandemic.
Yes, and incorporate it in all future education delivery.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah, and now we move ahead to our book review section, Dilip. Very interesting book review on, I think, what you've written the review, you described as, the most transformational book ever written.
Yes, I was very impressed with this book by the Nutmeg's Curse by Amitav Ghosh, where he traces a clear cause and effect, linear cause and effect between European colonization and genocide of indigenous people, and connects it with climate change, the devastation of climate change that we caused to it. We strongly recommend you not only read the book
review, but read the book itself.
The book. It could be transformative for your way of looking at things.
And of course, as usual, our not to be missed page, a postscript.
Which most people read our magazine backwards to forwards. Here where we take a wry look at things not only connected with education. For example, we talk about the Indian Railways, how it's been driven off the tracks, so to speak, and captured by its employees. It seems to be that Indian Railways exists for its employees and run by its employees
And
of the employees. And this is why there's a widespread disillusionment with Indian Railways. And there's been a devastating report of the Controller General, who says that they're indulging in window dressing on a mass scale. And then we talk also about the World Inequality Report,
yes.
which is published by the Paris-based Inequality Lab, of which French economist Thomas Piketty is a major leading light. And they point out that there are huge inequalities in India and income inequalities. But their panacea for this is something quite surprising. According to them, liberalization is the cause of this. Whereas in fact, according to our report,
liberalization has lifted, huge millions of people out of poverty in India.
Yes, but they recommend that more of socialism, which has caused inequality in the first place. It's some kind of a weird thinking, which you made some caustic comments about.
Yes.
And
then in our last post-it,
we talk about the ubiquitous Byju's, where they're everywhere. They recommend the cricket, they endorse the cricket team. They're on television everywhere. But then now cracks are beginning to appear on the facade of the Byju's empire, the most valuable unicorn. And
one speculates that perhaps it could go the way some earlier edtech companies have gone down.
Yes, particularly Tutor Vista and Educom.
Yes.
So that's what we have for you in the latest issue of Education World. For us, it's been exciting to produce this, and we hope that you read it with due diligence and care, because
not just read it, we'd love to hear your views, feedback. These are very important issues on Indian education, which we are talking about. We'd like to hear your views and create a national debate, so everything leads to improvement. Dilip, before we bid our viewers goodbye, I'd like to quickly tell you, in our Parents World also we have information packed issue. We've done a very interesting cover story in Parents World, which is about
how to start the new year in a positive frame of mind.
Yes, positive, optimistically. We've interviewed very highly reputed nutritionists, child psychologists, parenting experts, and coaches.
But basically, what you're saying is don't be down, because don't let the COVID pandemic get you down.
Yes,
it's better to have a positive mindset, and we can overcome all challenges.
Yes, and we recommend 5 areas which we think are important for parents to work on, including health and wellness of their children, etc.
Yes.
So we highly recommend Parents World too.
Because we recommend Parents World because education not only happens in the classroom, it happens at home. And there's a neglected area of darkness for most households. I think now parents need to understand that they need to begin the process of educating, or continue the process of educating their children at home.
Yes, indeed.
So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. We wish you a healthy and happy year 2022.
And don't be despondent. It won't last forever. Better times are ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.